2, 3, 4.
Run up your engines! It's a 2006 Toyota Prius. Now, Toyota has sold over 4.3 million Priuses, so they sold a lot of these things. As we open the hood, you get a tiny 4-cylinder Atkinson cycle engine and an electric motor. Now, the gasoline engine only puts out 76 horsepower, but the electric motor puts out an additional 67 horsepower. But it's not the horsepower that matters at this, it's the torque, the pulling power. Because although it only has 143 horsepower, guess what? When you combine those motors, you have 362 pound-feet of torque. That's what a big V8 generally puts out. Electric motors have a lot of torque. So although this doesn't have much horsepower, it's got pretty good acceleration. Torque is what gives you the get up and go. That's what the electric motor's for. Really gives you some power. Now, the top speed of this thing is 112 miles an hour, but that's not what you buy this car for. You buy it because it's economical. This particular one gets 48 miles a gallon in the city and 45 miles a gallon on the highway. It gets worse gas mileage on the highway because it has regenerative braking, uses the electronic motor a lot in town, but on a highway, it's mainly using the gasoline motor, except when you floor it. Electric motors give it extra boost, so it has acceleration. I've had it where the electric part breaks for a customer, and I tried driving around with just the gas motor, hooking an alternator up, but I mean, a real dog's then. It's made to have the boost. That's part of the integral design of this car. And of course, when you mix a hybrid synergy drive with electric motors, a battery, a CVT transmission that can take input from the gasoline engine, and input from the electric motors, you're talking about a really complex vehicle. But then again, it is a Toyota. As we go inside, thing is 14 years old. Small woman drives it, so back goes the seat, and we'll start her up. You don't hear anything because it's an electric. It won't go into the motor until it needs it. But as we see here, baby's got 132,000 miles on it. And it's got a pretty utilitarian inside. The cloth seats, still in excellent shape. Got a lot of readouts here that you can mess around with because it's got the map, it's got all kinds of stuff you can mess around with. But even though it's a small car on the outside, it's not that small on the inside. They maximize space. Still pretty comfortable in the back seat. Got the old armrest, reasonable amount of room. Then we go to the trunk. You can see it's got a reasonable amount of space down in here. And the cover so people can't see what's inside. If somebody loses a cover, you buy one used, believe me, get a cover. You don't want people stealing stuff. When it's closed, you can't see inside, that's what you want. Decent alloy wheels. They're still in good shape after all these years. They are relatively low to the ground. When they're as aerodynamic as this thing is, it's going to be low to the ground, so you don't go over speed bumps fast. Let's take it for a spin. I do admit it's kind of weird that you push a button, you don't hear anything, but that's how these are. And you just put it in reverse and start backing up. You heard the motor start there. These things don't run that far in electricity alone. It's a boost. Now as we take off, relatively quiet vehicle. The motor is running. It isn't just going on electric. They're relatively quiet vehicles, and they have a decent ride over bumps. It's a small wheelbase low to the ground, but they really don't ride all that bad. And now we'll try the acceleration. Turn the motor off. We're going to step on the gas. As you can see, it does move. It has a CVT transmission, so there's no gear shifting. But with all that torque of the electric motor and the gasoline motors, they get up and go. They're not slow little cars. Bumps, not that bad for a little car like this. I've been in plenty worse. And this thing has all original struts on it too. Nothing's been touched on it. Now, since they have a CVT transmission, granted, when you step on the gas and go, they do kind of sound like motorboats because there's no gears. They just rev and go, but they move. They're not totally slow vehicles. You'll notice one thing when we look in the door here. What does it say? Made in Japan. Yes, these are very high-tech vehicles, but they're made by Toyota. Made in Japan. They do hold up quite well. Now you get 200,000 miles or more on them, they start to get expensive to repair. Yes. But if you get 200,000 something miles out of this car, getting 48 miles a gallon in town, I'd say you got your money's worth. With the well over 100,000 miles on this, everything's still working perfectly fine. Unless you're a riverboat gambler, you don't want to buy one of these used with 200-something thousand miles on it, because the regular battery is going to cost you at least $5 grand to replace. You can put in those reconditioned batteries, but a bunch of hoo-ha. You might get a year or two out of them. They'll never work at full capacity because all they've done is replace one or more cells. The battery's made out of many cells, and as they go bad, they'll replace some of them. But let's say another 5 years the battery goes out. Then you'll have a 20-something-year-old battery, which some of the battery cells were replaced when it was reconditioned. It never lasts as long as the original one. I tell people, if you got one of these, you want it to last, put the original Toyota battery in. It's going to cost you a lot of money, but then it might last another 15, 20 years. Who knows? The refurbished ones, not a big fan. That's why I'm not a big fan of somebody buying one of these used with real high mileage, because it costs so much money to put a good battery in. As I said before, hey, if the generator goes out as part of the transfer case, that can cost you $5,900. So buying a real high mileage one, not a smart idea. And even though it's got some serious mileage on it, the AC's still blowing freezing cold. Now it does have an electronic air conditioning compressor. That's why it's blowing cold even though the engine isn't running. It's running that off the battery now. Very expensive to fix as it breaks. Personally, I've only ever seen one break. It had 240,000 miles on it. Now when this Prius was new in 2006, it's about a $21,000 car. Today, 2021, they're about a $25,000 car. So all those years, that little price increase really isn't all that bad. They've sold millions of these, and this system of the Atkinson cycle engine and the electric motor has been not only copied, but just flat out bought the rights and bought them from Toyota and put them in their own cars. A lot of the Fords, same exact system on their hybrids in the beginning. It's a very successful hybrid design. The CVT transmissions are pretty bulletproof. Now Honda had a hybrid even before this one. Massive failure. Different design. This is a design that made it through. If you're looking for a hybrid that gets great gas mileage, certainly Prius is what you should think of. But do always take my warning into mind. If you're looking at a used one, I wouldn't buy one that has 200-something thousand miles on it unless it was dirt cheap and you're willing to throw that money away. I had a customer buy one of those for $800, and about 6 months later, the generator went out. There's a $5,900 job. They just shipped it to the junkyard. They said, we're not going to go any further. So don't overpay if you're buying a used one that has high mileage, because eventually it's going to need big repairs. But if you bought it new and got 200-something thousand miles out of it, like I said, hey, what's the complaint about that? So now you know the truth about an actual Prius, a 2006. It's been on the road all these years, still running like a clock. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Well, the Chinese, who now own Volvo, are doing what they planned. If you want to check out a 2020 Volvo Xc90 T8, it's a 3-row seater SUV, got a lot of room inside, and it is hybrid. It can run, they claim, 18 miles on electric only, but yeah, maybe going downhill with the windows rolled down and no air conditioning on. For a vehicle of that size, it is rated at a combined 27 miles a gallon. And if you combine the electric only range, use that until it runs out of power, and then it switches over to the 4-cylinder turbo and supercharged engine, you'll get 34 miles a gallon in those things. For an SUV of that size, that is pretty good gas mileage. Obviously, Volvo is going into that. Realize the Chinese own it. It's a Chinese company now. So when you combine the gasoline engine and the electric boost on that thing, because it is a hybrid, that thing puts out 400 horsepower. And it's all-wheel drive, too. So you got power and stability. Volvos are always known for stability, but not that much power. Now they got both. It goes 0 to 60 in the mid 5 seconds, and that's pretty fast for a SUV. I've driven some pretty fast ones that were a lot slower than that. And they have all the tech. They have half a dozen different driving modes that you can set. It's basically what the old classic famous Volvo station wagons has turned into. But sadly, they're not giving these things away. They start at 68 grand, and if you test out a fancy one, those can be upwards of 86 $86,000. Faithful Volvo station wagons, which didn't cost that much, they're probably rolling over in their graves that they're charging $86,000 for the fancy version of their station wagons today. But there's a lot of rich people out there, they got that kind of money lying around, they probably would like it, especially if they were hippy dippies in the 60s and owned 70s and owned one. And now they became millionaires, they will go out and buy one of these things, because it certainly isn't for the average American at that price range. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.